from the Catholic Underground.
Today on the show, Hacking Mind and Body, a Gaelic cover of Garth Brooks. If you can believe that, the fMRI and Modesty, our picks of the week, and so much more. The Catholic Underground starts right now. Oh my. Well, it is time for the Catholic Underground, your weekly Catholic guide to the digital continent. It's episode number, wait for it, 270. I'm Father Chris Decker. If you are listening live, and we hope you are, you can join us at CatholicUnderground.tv and get your chat on with us. That's what they're doing in the chat room right now. Joining me this week, we've got Father Ryan Humphreys. He's the rector of the Minor Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in historic Natchitoches, Louisiana. Hello, Father.
Hello, world.
Also, we've got Jeff Blackwell, the technical director of the CU. He's the commandant of the ever-orbiting, ever-faithful Jeffstar 1 near-Earth orbit satellite. Hello, Jeff.
Howdy-ho, neighbor.
Also, Tim the Sim, production assistant, is our disembodied video director for the live stream. And Kathleen is on assignment. She's actually at one of the Steubenville conferences with the youth group. So, good for her.
Yay,
We'll look forward to a report from her. Father Ryan, you remember the Steubenvilles of yore.
Oh, yeah. I was the director of logistics at some and director of work crew at some and young apostles. And for, I guess, about maybe 14 years, I was very involved at the operational level. I remember it very well. It's a wonderful experience.
And actually, I was involved at the operational level, although I've never been to one. I was Father Ryan's production assistant on a lot of stuff.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so Kathleen, we look forward to a report because we know you watch all of the back issues of CU. Well, okay. It's kind of a new thing because as everybody is heading to the gym, right, to try and, make sure their bodies are working in top-notch condition, and everybody is now dieting and watching what they eat, there are certain things that are being known nowadays as life hacks, right, Father? Basically, ways to kind of hack the way that you're living your life so that you can be more efficient or so that you actually will do things just in a better way.
Right. I think that as we've gotten less and less family and tradition oriented, and as kind of the melting pot of the country has become more and more intense, we've started having difficulty passing along the old wives' tales and those old pieces of wisdom. And so nowadays we really do have to say, well, how do we do? I mean, obviously some basic stuff, but how do we grow plants, or how do we, do gardening, or what's a cool trick you found for living in an apartment, or what's a cool trick you found for traveling internationally, and so on and so forth. And so these life hacks just kind of became a thing probably about 5 or 6 years ago at lifehacker.com. And now it's become a thing where you can find a lot of incredibly useful information, something as simple as a binder clip.
Right.
Say, okay, well, I've got a lot of wires hanging off my desk. I put a binder clip and I put my phone charger, kind of wired in there. And like magic, my phone charger doesn't fall off my desk every day.
I know. I use
It's not like it's going to change the world, but it's going to make your life better.
Yeah, I use that particular life hack, as a matter of fact. Father Ryan knows how many wires I have in my domicile. So, a lot of binder clips, as it were.
Yeah. Well, the one I found that I thought was incredibly cool to start the show is, and it's in fact incredibly useful because I've been using it in my own life. When you have different kinds of problems, it turns out that your brain and your body react different ways to them. So if you have a problem that's very practical, the smart move, whether you're me with my kind of OCD brain, or whether you're you, Father, with your artistic way of thinking, you should sit down to deal with practical problems. Because for whatever reason, that's the body kind of says, I'm in practical mode now. But if you're going to ponder the great mysteries of the world, you should get yourself a bistro table and stand around said bistro table and think about the abstract mysteries of the universe.
Because that seems to be a thing now. I know if you see a lot of the mod furniture design in offices, there are standing areas in a lot of offices, like Google, I would imagine, would have this. And then, of course, there are seating areas for group discussion. And so a lot of the modular furniture is moving. There are even desks in offices, Jeff, if you can imagine this, that are on hydraulics. I go up and down based upon the type of task that you're performing.
My heavens. Anytime you can't call a couple of guys come lift the table up for you, and just kind of hold it there for a while.
I don't know what kind of office you were in, Jeff.
Well, what occurred to me is we've always had offices where you'd stand around the water cooler to discuss certain things, and then you sit around the desk for other things. And I'm wondering whether it's just one of those intuitive things that we kind of knew without knowing.
Yeah.
And now that it's practical, and now you say, oh, well, I know if I'm going to work on something abstract, for me at least, I like to walk around my room.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to do something practical, I sit down, put the papers in front of me, and I work on it practically. And this has just kind of brought what I've already sort of known into the forefront. So now I'm consciously doing it instead of unconsciously.
Yeah, is it strange that I tend to do things backwards? I will actually sit to do abstract thinking, because a lot of my abstract stuff happens in an application or, in a drawing or something like that.
Oh, I see.
And I will actually stand to do things productive to tell my body, okay, let's be at attention here. But then again, an artist's brain is an artist's brain. So,
yeah. I was thinking maybe that's what it is. Because you have to, well, especially for your ideas and your creativity, you have to have something to press a pencil against, and that's hard
right.
to do when you're standing.
Now, I could do that standing, as a matter of fact. I've never really thought about it. But I think that what you're saying, Father, is actually, there's a lot of truth to that. Because if you think about it, the water cooler, yeah, that's a place where you stand around and you ponder the mysteries of the workplace, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some practical stuff, but I mean, that's where you stand around and you say, yeah, I mean, isn't that amazing? Or kids these days, or I'll tell you, I don't understand how we're going to deal with these big epic problems of life or the company. But when it actually comes to how are we going to get this project done, or, what's that presentation going to include, nobody stands around. Everybody sits at the desk and they discuss around the table. It's just one of those fascinating things that our human psychology and physiology, we could spend a book talking about it, but it's just one of those things. And now we know, and you go, oh, okay, easy enough.
And that is the cool thing too about life hacks, is it gives you the opportunity to go, well, maybe the way I have been doing things might be best served in trying something new. And so the Lifehacker website for me has been a helpful resource, because I go, well, maybe I will try standing to do the extemporaneous thinking and sitting to be more productive. In fact, I might do that this week, as a matter of fact, and just see if things change around or begin. If I see, I don't know how you can measure this as a priest. Does my productivity rise?
Well, I mean, I love that, though, because one of the things that Lifehacker does is very much like the end of an AA meeting. It just says, look, take what you want, try it out. There's a couple of methods of productivity. For example, there is the 1-3-5 method. There is the Eisenhower matrix, or the Covey method. There's the GTD mentality and method. And rather than say this is the right way, it says, look, these are different ways that work. And some of them really are universal, like the stand-sit thing. But a lot of them it's based on your personality. So I like the Eisenhower matrix. Somebody like you, Father, may prefer the 1-3-5, and someone else may say, no, it's just better for me to make a to-do list and then go down it straight in a linear fashion. And hey, wherever your particular job and your life calls for, you do that.
Yeah,
I kind of like the Holiday Inn Express method myself. But,
just fake it till you make it.
Yeah, I did say it at Holiday Inn Express last night.
We are not underwritten by Holiday Inn Express.
No, we're not. I'm just kidding. Come on.
I know of the Covey method, because actually I was voluntold many times as a seminarian to go to the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People training, because it was all the thing in my day in the seminary. And I actually like that quadrant method, where you put something that's important and urgent in one quadrant, you do that. Mm-hmm. Then you have important but not urgent, and then you have unimportant and not urgent, and so it's this 4-quadrant sector to sort things into. And in my head, I've kind of begun to do that. Yeah. One of our folks in the chat room who actually works at a spice mine, I don't think it's Ruapenthe, it's probably on Arrakis. Says that 3/4 of his office space are sitting cube type, so the cubicle. Mm-hmm. A quarter of them are standing, and then a few medicine ball desks as well. Jeff, I think you could totally rock the big medicine ball desk, the big giant inflatable ball sitting on that.
Yeah.
We need to get Jeff one of those for Hanukkah.
Open to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get you a Hanukkah ball.
We can put some video.
What we'll do is we'll get him the desk for Hanukkah, and then get him the chair for Kwanzaa.
There you go. That's perfect.
Hey, man, I've got something to look forward to now.
Jason in the chat says that GTD is all the rage, the getting things done mode of doing things. I tried that for a little while, but it was a little too regimented for me.
Well, if you're a kind of person who's working in multiple contexts on multiple projects, GTD is amazing. Like if I've got my home life, I've got my work life, my family life. Maybe I coach baseball. Maybe I have like a fantasy football league, and if you have a bunch of different contexts and none of them overlap, and from 3 to 5 a day, you've got to be working on this, and GTD works great for that. Just like Eisenhower Matrix is really designed to take a massive inbox and hack it down into something usable. But if you're in a career where you don't really have an inbox, you just have a couple of projects you're working on steadily, then that's going to be useless for you. And 135 is really for people who have a very, very hard time thinking about more than one thing and work an almost entirely project-oriented life. And so, the whole idea is you pick what works for you, and some may work better, some may work worse, depending on where you find yourself.
Indeed. And so there are also, in addition to these organizational life hacks, some other really fun life hacks as well that we like. One of my favorites is one that Father Ryan turned me on to whenever I went up to the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Natchitoches to visit him. We were enjoying a meal together because Father Ryan does love to cook. Mm-hmm. I would imagine it was something probably with cumin in it that we had. And Father Ryan says, "Why don't you pop a bottle of wine open?" So I did, and I was getting ready to pour. And a good sommelier will tell you need to let the wine aerate. Right?
Yeah, right.
You need to. So I uncorked it and I poured it, and I was going to let it aerate in the glass. Well, Father Ryan takes my glass and he pours it in the top of his blender, and then he takes the bottle and he pours that whole thing in the blender, and then he turns the blender on, and he aerated the wine right there in less than 5 minutes.
How long do you let it blend, though? That's this is new to
60
me.
seconds.
Yeah, just
give
a
or
minute.
take.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa!
It depends on the kind of wine, if it's a Burgundy or if it's a Merlot or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and of course, it's important that you put the top on the blender. I have learned this. I've learned this the hard way. I was over at some friend's house, and actually, it wasn't completely my fault because I did have the top on the blender, but there was. I don't know if their blender was broken or what, but all of the wine leaked out of the bottom of the blender.
Oh no!
So there was it was as if there was blood all over the counter. It was something. So yes, do make sure you have a functioning blender before you try this life hack at home. Father Ryan, what are some of your favorites?
Well, actually, I found the one that was really great for me at my former residence was a shoe rack. Just a plastic kind of shoe rack, plastic thing on the back of the pantry door. And I could put, lots of like the little gravy mixes, or I could put, little packet of beans or a little thing of garlic or whatever in the little where the shoes would ordinarily go in the shoe rack. It was incredibly useful.
Nice.
And took a bunch of stuff off of racks that were hard to find. I also had cabinets that had bottoms on them.
Yeah.
And so I was able to put a bunch of cup hooks, and instead of hanging cups, I would hang the lids of big pots.
Yeah.
So all the lids were out of the way, and then I was cooking, I'd be searing something, I could look over and go, "Oh, need to cover this," whoop, and then put the lid on. It was really, really great. And I mean, that was just a matter of cup hooks under cabinets, and that's a classic life hack where you're using something not for what it's intended, but it works really well.
Yeah.
Also, I found out that if you've got a garbage disposal, those things stink a lot.
Yeah.
And so if you buy some little clementine oranges, they're easy to eat and they're a good snack for weight loss anyway. Mm-hmm. But throw the citrus peels, maybe one of those oranges a week into the disposal, turn the water on, let it run for about a minute, and the disposal will basically clean itself and will smell of citrus instead of smelling like the funk. And so that was a neat little hack, and it saves me money on some kind of chemical.
This kind of sounds like Pinterest for fathers. Excuse me, but
well, I mean, because a lot of this stuff does show up on Pinterest. You're right.
Yeah, but this is through Lifehack that you're talking.
Yeah, Lifehacker. Which I mean, Lifehacker is again, we are not a wholly owned subsidiary of Lifehacker, but they're a good website because they have life hacks kind of across the board, whether it's organization or it's your kitchen. And I believe they probably also have a Pinterest page, too. Why wouldn't they? I mean, in this day and age.
Right,
one of my favorite life hacks.
This is Pinterest for men. Yeah, see, I like that. That's a good word.
Yeah, it's Mentrist.
Mentrist. I love it.
Trademark. So one of my favorites is using a letter sorter. Those multi-tiered letter sorters.
Yeah.
To hold pans and cookie sheets and your own like little chopping boards and things like that.
Oh,
so that way you can stack them. Yeah. Unfortunately, in the rectory I'm in now, I don't have cabinet space that accommodate the stacking of those. But I have used it in the past, and it works very well.
Neat.
So Jeff, looks like you've got some homework to do.
Yeah, I got a little catching up to do.
Imagine Diana's going to think that you have become quite quite the man about the house with all of your life hacks.
Nah, that's not going to happen.
That's wishful thinking. Yeah. Well, you can let us know maybe what some of your life hacks are. You can do it in the chat room if you're watching us live, or you can backchat at CatholicUnderground.com. That's a good way to go. And we also go this way. Hark, thou art listening to the Catholic Underground. We are online at CatholicUnderground.tv. I am Father Chris Decker, your humble host. Father Ryan Humphreys joins us on Skype from Natchitoches. Jeff Blackwell is over there on the Jeff Star 1 near Earth orbit satellite, also known as the audio room. And seminarian Tim Grimes, who is our production assistant, is in the video room. Our picks of the week are coming up a little bit later. But first, I suppose we should say that Tim has been upgraded from seminarian intern to production assistant.
Absolutely, a great PA.
Because I tell you what, because he has been running all over the studio. We're going to miss him when he goes back to the seminary. But I mean, all things must come to an end, especially the good ones, you know. And so
he always has a home here, though.
That's right, Tim. You are officially I don't know what an undergrounder. There we go.
Yeah.
So, all right, a language school has its development department and its curriculum in quite the right place. And Jeff, this is one of those YouTube videos that for me is a must see.
Here is great. The Cole Lurgan School teaches students to speak Gaelic and quite unusual methods of teaching the language. And they also do a series of music videos, which you can find on YouTube. In fact, in our show notes here at CatholicUnderground.com, you'll be able to go to the links that we have there. And they do some traditional Gaelic songs, but they do some other popular songs that have been translated into Gaelic, one of which, Lord, which I think, is it Royals was the name of the song. And then, but surprisingly, a Garth Brooks tune, Calling Baton Rouge, in Gaelic. It's a hoot and a half.
Awesome.
I wish I could say that.
I didn't know that this was a school, actually. I thought you went to a school. I didn't realize that this was a school, because the music video is really interesting, because it's kind of like perhaps what the Irish would consider Louisiana culture to be like, as seen through the eyes of Garth Brooks. So in the video, you've got this kind of line dancing happening. You've got a 12-year-old playing the piano, and I'm thinking to myself, what sort of youth gathering is this? And if this is the youth of Ireland, then I think we're probably in good shape, because if Calling Baton Rouge in Gaelic is what they're all rocking out to, then there perhaps is hope for peace.
Well, the results are pretty amazing, and I don't understand Gaelic. You say that you don't speak much Gaelic. How about you, Father Ryan? Are you a Gaelic
Not a word. I can do a ridiculous accent, but I can't speak a word of it.
Okay.
And as for me, I can toast in it, but that's about it. And actually, the more that I have, the better my toast in Gaelic. So anyway.
So I mean, what?
But I spent several hours of my life combing through this thing, watching, songs from The Lion King, Lord, Bastille, just tons and tons of older and older and older songs. They've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
And what the school does is they have your usual sit down and write or read or pronounce the language. But apparently the language is not difficult to get the basics of, sort of like Hebrew. And then once you've got the basics, it's just a function of getting used to the different sounds in your mouth. And so what the school does is basically the kids do projects all the time, and making music videos for some of those projects. And sometimes they get up and they do a skit in the Gaelic language. And it's incredible because all this stuff is on YouTube.
Yeah. And
of course, I run a school. And so I immediately called my Spanish teacher at 9:45 at night and said, watch the video, do it now. And my non-Catholic Spanish teacher went, okay, that seems very good. I'm confused as to why you're calling me.
I'm going to bed now,
it's
Father.
Incredible. But you could imagine, at my school, I've got a lot of kids who are Protestant who do a lot of praise and worship music. I can translate that into Spanish. Piece of cake, and there's a project there. We could do whatever song they like that's popular that I approve of, and translate that into Spanish, and then do a music video. You put that on YouTube. Your school gets credibility. Your students are learning. It's just a win, 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 win. And so I'm super pumped about using this as an educational tool.
That's right. And I think about, as you say, you were considering it with Spanish, but, down here in Louisiana, not only is Spanish becoming more and more of a thing just by necessity, but in a lot of the areas such as where I am the pastor of two parishes that have a French heritage, there was very much a time in which French was discouraged. Certainly Cajun French was discouraged. Mm-hmm. And only now are certain schools trying to make it a part of their curriculum once again. And I really think that a school could put itself on the map if it adopted this kind of this complete immersion type of deal, especially with something like Akkadian, because actually Akkadian has quite a bit in common with Gaelic in terms of the sounds, in terms of the kind of the Celtic nature, the mournful nature of its music. I think there could be a real good connection there, and a lot of folks are. And there's
yep. I was going to say there's a ton of great folk music available in the French tradition as well. That's very, very native sounding, and of course, down there where you are, Father, you have all the Cajun bands, and you have Big Mamu and these other places, and L'Angelou, and young people who are really trying to write new music in French and to adapt popular music into French. So it's all right there to go.
That's right. One of the ones that I think about right off the bat is a young man named Joel Martin. Who has a band called the Joel Martin Project, and he is from Lafayette, Louisiana, which is kind of the center of Cajun culture nowadays, Acadian culture, and Joel has been on the accordion since he was probably knee high to a kilt, and he actually has written a lot of new stuff in the old style.
Really?
So he at first he taught himself to sing the Acadian the Cajun hymns phonetically. And then in school he learned French, and so he's writing these kind of new French songs, but to the old Cajun three-quarter time, the waltzes and the two steps and things like that. So that's a really interesting way to think about how we can look at language, and I'd love to see it happen in Latin, Father.
Yeah, we were showing that in the chat room, and we're teaching Latin in my school this year, and I'm wondering whether or not I should change, awesome God or some other God-forsaken, piece of praise and worship music into Latin and see what happens. It could be fun.
Domine Gaudium, huh?
Well, I'm thinking there's a song by a guy named Chris Tomlin called Enough.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole thing would just be Satis.
That's like Satis.
It would be so funny to translate that song into Latin just to see what would happen.
We'll send Jeff up there to be one of your first students, because he is intently. Anytime I say anything in Latin, he's like a dog that just heard a noise. He kind of tilts his head and his ear perks up a little bit.
But there's a reason for that, because I did read. I've told you before, I've read some audiobooks, and 3 were written by Pope Benedict. So there was a lot of Latin in there. And I actually referred to Father Miles Walsh to help me out with a lot of it. And I kind of, so I always have to think about the E's, the I's, the A's, and the how,
Latin vowels are important.
Yeah, so I'm sure they are. But that's why I kind of have that RCA puppy dog look like, Yeah, I'm thinking about it. That's all.
That's right. The sound of his master's voice.
But I would love to be a volunteer, Father Ryan. Yeah, ring me up.
So from the amazing,
yes,
to quite astounding, actually, and not necessarily in a good way. Would you consider surgery for contraception on a microchip? Now, a warning up front: if you go to the show notes, the website that we're linking to supports contraception for all of the usual silly illogical reasons that we have gone into in the past, and we probably will in the future. But this is right from the Gates Foundation, I believe, Father. And
it is. They're funding it directly.
And this is a direct fund from, and actually, I think it was the brainchild of Mr. William Bill Gates. And basically, he says that this chip is a deployment mechanism for the birth control drug. I don't know how to pronounce it. I guess
levonorgestrel.
Levonorgestrel. And the idea is that, which of course is Plan B. That's what it's called. It's an abortifacient, so it does indeed not just provide for the uninhabitability of life in the womb, but it actually will kill a fertilized embryo. And so this is, I will say this, it's a really interesting concept from the point of view of what computers can do. Basically, the way that this works is that there are a bunch of little hermetically sealed micro dosages of this medication, and it's then implanted into a woman, and at intervals, it will burst one of those little hermetically sealed packages in the microchip and release the medication into the uterus. And as you say, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. It's a fascinating scientific thing, but very, very dangerous. And of course, this chip, because of the fact that it's a microchip, it can work for up to 16 years, releasing this drug, which is also a class 1 carcinogen, right, Father?
Yeah, it's horrific in every way.
It goes into the bloodstream. It aborts pregnancy after pregnancy for 16 years. And I would imagine, Father, that this is being touted as a solution for the developing world because it's technology,
Yeah, I mean,
and all that.
right. I mean, Bill Gates, for all the good efforts that they have made, he and his foundation, to kind of help, so many of the ways that they've provided solutions, I mean, are just horrific. You can't say we're going to help the world by killing off all the people who are a problem.
Yeah.
There's a comedy sketch on a show you and I both like, the Mitchell and Webb look, where they're sitting around in this office in the United Kingdom, and a guy goes, "Well, what do we do about raising taxes?" "No." "Well, why don't we increase VAT?" He goes, "What about kill all the poor?"
Yeah.
And they go, "We can't do that." And he goes, "Just run it through the computer. Let's take a look." And it feels very much the same way, where I appreciate that Bill Gates wants to be a philanthropist. I appreciate he wants to make new technology.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of technology that, if you're not talking about birth control, but you're talking about a different kind of illness.
Yeah, releasing cancer fighting medications and things like that.
Right. Or things that where it's difficult to give an injection or something like that,
right,
but you want to implant something under the skin so you don't have to worry about forgetting, even an Alzheimer's medication.
Right.
But to put this technology to use, killing people, killing children, and increasing the risk of carcinogen, of cancer through the roof, it makes something that could be an incredible piece of technology,
right,
absolutely disgusting and despicable, and something that makes you say, well, I kind of hope his foundation just falls into the ground, as opposed to this really amazing piece of technology, finds its home with something good.
That's right. Lachey in the chat room says, I wonder if instead of using it for abortion, they could use it for chemo, for cancer patients, things like that. I really, like you say, technology must be used responsibly. It's funny how we talk about drinking responsibly and getting a designated driver. It sounds to me like Mr. Gates needs a designated technologist, somebody just kind of slap his hand and say, no, you don't want to do that with that. That's actually a very bad idea.
We just need to get Jeff Goldblum from the Jurassic Park movies to sit in his office.
That's true. And eat,
just kind of,
eat Chilean sea bass.
Just because we can doesn't mean we should. Just because you can doesn't mean we should. That's what we need.
Now you're slapping a Windows logo on a lunchbox and you're selling it.
See, that could be the solution to so many of the world's problems. If we can just get Jeff Goldblum into more boardrooms, I think we could solve so many of the world's problems.
Just fly him in. These board meetings don't last long.
And I'm sure if you give the guy a nice snack in the middle, he'll be fine.
Yeah, just give him
Jeff
one of those.
Goldblum's a powerful man.
He is, and I bet he would be fine with just those little packets of Tom's crackers. Just peanut butter or cheese. You vary it up depending on what you want him to do. And
I think he's available too.
Yeah, he might very well be.
Oh, I'm sure he's committed to the environment. I personally think that Jeff Goldblum should be the next moral officer of our nation. I stand by it.
I would like to see that T-shirt.
It's so ridiculous.
Yep, I think that's a great idea.
Oh, wow.
So, staying with the medical field, new research is coming out of, and we've talked about it before, the fMRI program.
Yeah, an fMRI is an MRI machine with a little screen, and there's a speaker and there's a microphone, and you're able then to read what the brain is doing in real time, and you can show pictures. And what's fascinating, this is the new data that's coming out, is they've been doing men and women, kind of just running them through various batteries of tests for years now. Information I'm reading just in the last week, although it may have been published as far back as a few months ago, says that it turns out if you show a man, a picture of like hammers and saws and nails, a very particular part of the brain lights up, that part that's devoted to usefulness and practicality, and I'm going to use this thing to make something amazing. Well, if you show a man a picture of a pretty woman, all of a sudden the language center pops open. All of a sudden the amygdala and the parts that have to do with compassion and excitement and interest pop open. The whole brain just kind of lights up in different areas. Very interesting. So you show the same man a picture of the same woman head to toe in a fancy dress. The same thing. Same parts of the brain light up. You show the same man, the same woman in a bikini, all of those parts of the brain turn off. And the part that deals with hammers and nails turns back on.
Really?
And so immediately the man stops seeing the woman as a person and starts to see her as a tool to be used.
Wow.
That's what we're seeing. And it's one of those things. I started my sermon with this weekend saying, good science always proves the church is telling the truth.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things. Now, Kathleen has been talking about modest dress for several weeks.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of one of those interesting things where I came across an article this week from the Catholic Gentleman about custody of the eyes. And of course, for ladies, the way to deal with modesty is to dress modestly and to love themselves enough and care about themselves enough and care about us men enough, to cover themselves. And mothers have got to stop buying bikinis for their 5-year-olds or their 8-year-old. That's just despicable.
Yeah.
It's got to end. But for guys, we don't really have control over what ladies wear and what they don't. And so the custody of the eyes is an old way of saying, on the one hand, we have to take control of the easy stuff. What I put on my TV screen, what I put on my movie screen, and what I allow on my internet computer screen.
Right.
I can control that. I mean, I don't have to watch Channel 5. I don't have to watch HBO. I don't have to know what's going to happen on Game of Thrones. So I can control that. Then, for those things I can't control, I have to start working on the mental habit of looking at the faces of ladies who might not be dressed as modestly as they should be. And even if that means in an awkward way, forcing myself to pretend they don't have a body below the neck. That's what I've got to do. And as we learn how to take control of our eyes in this way, eventually our whole, spiritual life kind of develops into seeing this as a person instead of seeing this as a tool. Because remember, every guy is every guy. I try very hard to be chaste and pure, but I walk outside and there's some, beautiful woman walking by, with a taut body in a bikini. My brain turns off and I start turning on to how do I use this person? Because it's what every human being, every man does this naturally.
Yep.
And so we have to develop the skill of looking from the neck up and saying, this is the part that evokes the images I need to see about compassion, interest, etc. And I need to learn and train myself to ignore what may be devastating below the neck. And that seems nasty and terrible and disgusting and blah, but that's just what a man owes a woman. Just as that woman owes that man modest dress, the man owes the woman custody of the eyes. So it's a neat article, and it's a good thing to remember, especially in the summertime.
And as it turns out, Father, this notion of custody of the eyes, I mean, whether you're getting proof of it on the fMRI or not, it's just good common sense. I mean, the notion of using women as objects and now even women using men as objects is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. And that is why custody of the eyes, this notion that is kind of becoming popular again on blogs, is really just a restatement of practicing the virtues, right?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and we realize that whenever we practice virtue, when we practice those important ways in which we are aiming towards the Lord and not towards our own will, we actually then begin to cultivate the fruits of the Spirit. Those begin to be born in us. It's kind of like the gospel for this past weekend, where if the seed is sown on good soil, the soil, the soil of our hearts is cultivated by practicing virtue, by custody of the eyes, by placing ourselves in the occasion of grace instead of the occasion of sin. What begins to happen is we begin to bear great fruit, 100 or 60 or 30-fold. And we actually can begin to find our lives transformed. And there can come, and correct me if I'm wrong, Father, there can come a time where we actually do not, by knee-jerk, see the woman as object, but we want to see her as subject. You know, there can come that time. There can come that time where grace is so abounding in our lives, where it is the child of God that we see and not an object to be used.
Yeah, I agree. That's certainly the plan that everybody needs to work toward, because that's what we as human beings need to train ourselves to be masters of our emotion and not just be animalistic, not just give in to the natural tendencies. And the fMRI tells us what our natural tendency is, and so this gives us now a benchmark to say I can do better.
Yep.
If I'm a real man and I'm a Christian man, I can do better.
That's right. And as you say, Father, in the show notes, practicing our prayers is very, very important too, right? The rosary is an important help. The sacramental life is certainly an important help. I tell young men especially, don't be afraid to go to confession. If you have trouble with purity especially, don't be afraid to go to confession, and don't think that, oh, Father, here I am again. Father's not going to want to see me. No, God always wants to see you. Mm-hmm. Always.
Amen.
He always wants you back, especially if you're in the confessional. So don't be afraid, young men, and don't be afraid, young women, either, because we know the world in which we live is getting to be a lot more objectified place for the life of women as well. So don't be afraid to go to the confessional. It takes a while, but it does, in fact, get easier over time if we begin to cultivate the soil with grace and not with vice. You are listening to The Catholic Underground. We are your Catholic guide to the digital continent. We are so happy that you're along with us for the journey. I am Father Chris Decker. Joining me on Skype up in Natchitoches, Louisiana, or it might be down in Natchitoches, depending on where you're watching us from, Father Ryan Humphreys. He's there. Jeff Blackwell is there. And Tim the seminary and production assistant. His title's getting longer, is over in the video cave. We thank him for his presence with us this summer. The 8 habits, because we talked a little bit about the Covey principles, they're still around. They've never really left us. The 8 habits of highly effective Catholics. I think we like lists, as you know. In fact, we might have to get Jeff in his spare time to create a little audio sounder for our lists.
I can do that.
Yeah, I bet you could. In fact, he's done it already in his head. I know how these artists work. And so we thought maybe we'd do our list for you this week, the 8 habits, highly effective Catholics. Number 1, you may not expect this, accept suffering. There's a good way to begin, is to accept the cross. And this of course, Father, has a lot to do with really living the charismatic life, introducing ourselves to the charisma. First, we have to recognize that we suffer. It's just part of our human condition. And then to say, okay, I accept the suffering that's coming my way.
Yeah, and if we're going to be an effective Catholic, we're going to have to put aside the gospel of prosperity, the notion that what God wants from me is just for me to be happy every minute of every day. Yeah. And that's just not scriptural. And so until we say I accept that suffering is a necessary part of God getting me into heaven, then I can never be effective in my faith. I can never really evangelize. So you've got to start by seeing the world as it is, and that means accepting the reality of suffering.
That's right. But before we can see the world as the Lord wishes it to be, we have to see the fallen world in which we live today, right? You know, to see how grace can be active, we have to recognize that in our world there are many areas in which it is not active, and then, of course, we also have to recognize that sometimes bad things just happen, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's true.
Number 2, accept the reality of death. St. Benedict said it well, keep death always before you. It's amazing how to be an effective Catholic, a recognition of my own mortality, first of all, I know in my own life, brings a great deal of humility. And I find that if I accept the reality of my own death, one day it will occur. Sometimes it freaks me out. Sometimes I'm okay with it. Sometimes I'm afraid of it. Sometimes I actually, if you can say there are times where you go, I'm looking forward to the day that comes, Lord. Whether it's soon or far away, I look forward to being with you. Once we accept the reality of our own death, I then can begin to look at the other person and say, that other person one day will know death as well. And so can I actually treat the other person as if they are on the same journey that I am? I don't know, Jeff, did that resonate?
Yes, and it seems like the older I get, the more I accept, how things have gone. And I've been usually pretty comfortable with this, circle of life, or however it's
and it moves us
termed.
all.
And but you're right. Stuff happens, and there are things that you can't control that are out of your control. So I think that's good to have on the list at number 2.
Yeah, I always think about the saints. In fact, in the chat room, Lachey says I was reading about some saints that would meditate on death. Very interesting. There are especially young saints in the early days of the church, the early Roman martyrs, who prayed for martyrdom because they knew that would be a beautiful way in which they could glorify God. They knew the state of the church. They knew it was in a state of persecution, and so they simply prayed, Lord, if it is your will, I will become a martyr. It doesn't mean I'm going to strap explosives to my body. That's kind of the way we see that in the world in which we live today. But it means that if death should present itself to me, I will welcome it.
Yeah.
It's a very different understanding of martyrdom that we as Christians have. We don't necessarily run into it and make it happen. But we do indeed try to seek those things that can bring glory to God. And in some cases, especially with the early saints, it was with the gift of their life to the Lord. Number 3, of course, pray daily. This seems like a no-brainer, but
it's remarkably difficult to make sure you're praying daily and for it to kind of constantly be something that is growing within you.
Yeah.
You actually have to make a plan. It seems easy to, I'm going to pray more. Well, the rosary is a great place to start. You're getting at least a little bit of time in. The Liturgy of the Hours is a great place to go for that. Obviously, something simple like maybe renewing your baptismal vows in the shower in the morning is a neat idea.
Yep.
Having some prayers that you kind of, that you cycle through maybe on your way to work. Those are good things to do, the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. But, you also just need some time to sit with the Lord. And if you can't do that, you have to consciously plan it, because otherwise you look up and it's 11:15 at night and you're going, how did I forget to pray again for the third day in a row? And so, we've got to make a plan to set aside some time, even if it's just, on your lunch break at work, or even if it's just, the kids are screaming and yelling, put them with the other significant other and lock yourself in the bathroom.
This
is mommy's private time, and take your time for prayer. However you can get it. It doesn't matter how, God is there with you, but you've got to build a plan for it. Otherwise, it'll slip away.
And connected to that, number 4, listen during prayer.
Important.
I'm extremely guilty of this.
Good thinking.
It's good thinking there. The guy who came up with this list, good thinking. This is especially difficult for me because I'm an extrovert. Even though my prayer life tends to be a tad more introverted these days, I tend to want to do all the talking and not listen. But if I'm praying daily, it's important that the soul listen during prayer. Because it turns out the Lord has a lot to say. Even if the Lord is saying it in silence, and especially if you might be in a place of desolation in your own prayer life right now, the Lord has a lot to say, even if it doesn't seem like he's saying anything.
That's right. And one of my prayers is, Lord, amplify that small voice, please. Mm-hmm.
That's right. Didn't work for Elijah. He just recognized the small voice finally when it came. It took him a little bit to get there. But yes, listen during prayer. Number 5 is also difficult in the world in which we live. Avoid distractions. I more often than not, I was talking to our seminarian who is extremely astute, Tim the Simp, and we were talking about the breviary. The breviary, of course, is the collected liturgy of the hours that we as priests are bound to pray every day. And he was asking if I used the book. And I said, well, because I bounce between my 2 parishes, I have one copy of my breviary in my chapel, and so I might get to say one office there, or the 2 bookend, the morning and evening prayer. But the other offices I say on iBreviary on my iPhone, because I'm just happens to be wherever I am during the day.
Yes.
And I don't know why I never thought about it before, but I turn my phone in airplane mode when I pray my breviary.
Huh.
And I even do it whenever I go into the chapel. I put my phone in airplane mode, and I go, look, Lord, if it's an emergency call, please let it happen when it's out of airplane mode, and I'll get back to it. Just avoid distraction. Airplane mode, done. It's kind of seems simple, right? But it just kind of hit me a couple months ago. Why would I want somebody texting me or something showing up on my phone while I'm trying to pray my iBreviary?
That's right.
There it is.
That's right.
Number 6, seek counsel and spiritual direction. That's one of those that sometimes can also become more difficult. the spiritual direction especially, because not only, I don't know, Father, what it's like up there in Natchitoches, but it's hard to find a spiritual director. Sometimes it's hard to get to a spiritual director. And so sometimes spiritual direction is done by means of counsel with other holy people.
Right. Sometimes you have that kind of peer thing where you say, well, I don't have a priest or a nun or I can get to, or somebody who is older or wiser than me. So I just kind of have to talk about it among people. Of course, nowadays with Skype and with FaceTime, there is the possibility of having spiritual direction from a distance.
Yep.
But, it's still, there's something about getting there and actually saying, I'm going to spend the next hour opening myself up and trusting myself to someone and letting them give me direction, even if I don't want to hear it, even if I think I know better. There's just something about that deep humbling of the self that's so good for the spiritual life.
That's true, which is also why it's hard to go sometimes, is because you're going to get 2x4'd in the forehead, in some way.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, of course, surrender lovingly in holy obedience to the will of God.
Amen and amen.
I mean, surrender is quite possibly one of the most easy and difficult things to do at the same time, because I can surrender, but not really. But how wonderful whenever I've said, "Okay, Lord." In fact, funny story. We got time. It's only 3 of us. We're working on the CU radio stream, and Jeff, we had this huge computer. This big Google automation system. It's a big green box, and it has Google written on the side. And I drove to New Orleans, and I just drove to New Orleans to get that computer so that I could bring it home and work on it in my workshop, my dear. And I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here. And so the computer obviously has a hard drive issue because it was just click, 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 and it wouldn't boot.
Yeah.
And I said, Lord, if you want this to happen, I don't. Catholic Underground doesn't have the money to do this. That there are all sorts of things working against us with this. This is the only computer that we've got.
Yeah.
And I surrender once again this apostolate to you. I surrender it all. If you want to kill it tomorrow, that's fine. And I laid my hand on the computer, and I kid you not, it booted immediately. It booted immediately, and it had been clicking all evening. And I said, "Okay, Lord, point taken." Because whenever surrender works in those quasi miraculous moments, you then have a responsibility.
That's very true.
And so yes, to surrender lovingly in holy obedience to God's will, and then that leads us to the 8th thing: those who do these habits ultimately are happy. And happiness in the sense of fulfillment, right? That not just emotion, but that God is leading us to a place where we know that He is present. Even if He's silent, we know that we're being led by Him and not just by ourselves.
Great point.
There are a couple that we might add really quick there, right, Father?
Yeah, I would say that one of the things we need to do is you have to do penance. An effective Catholic does penance. An effective Catholic asks questions.
Yeah.
Even if he's got a degree in theology or she's got a degree in Scripture, you've got to be willing to ask questions because nobody knows the whole story.
Yeah.
The church took 20 centuries to get where we are, and you've got to be willing to ask questions. Honestly examines his or herself and honestly asks for help. And then I think forgiveness needs to play a giant part in that list as well, that I've got to be willing to extend forgiveness, and I got to be willing to ask forgiveness if I'm going to say that I'm seriously a follower of Jesus Christ. So just a few things to add.
That's right. It's really funny that as long as I've been a priest, 7 years, and people have asked me the same questions over and over about the faith, I will still forget the depth of the answer sometimes. And I think that's a gift of the Lord, to remind me to go back and ask questions and to, quote, do my homework, unquote, and to keep renewing my understanding of what the church teaches and what we believe. I guess that's where kind of lack of memory can be helpful in the life of faith. But there are some things that we do remember, and we call that
the CU Pick of the Week.
And to lead us on this technological anamnesis, we begin with Jeff Blackwell.
Why me? I brought show
I
and
say that
tell.
all the time. Yeah, hold on. Go ahead and introduce it, and I've got the device here.
Well, I brought show and tell because I've been looking around for one of these Bluetooth wireless speakers for a while, and I actually found one that I like a lot. The Unz XL wireless speaker. It's OONTZ. It's built by Cambridge Soundworks. And it's got a great sound. It's bigger than you've seen the type that are more like it looks like a paperweight. They're small and they're loud. They got a good sound, but this really has
this
a little
one
more.
looks almost like a bookshelf speaker.
Yeah, and it's got a little more bass response.
I think you would call it ounce.
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 Ounce XL.
Ounce. I bet that's why they call it an ounce. Ounce. Ounce.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. That's.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, keep going.
okay. Anyway, it's got a pretty big sound. My wife, in fact, we were barbecuing July 4th, sitting on the patio, just the two of us, and I said, "Man, I wish we had some music out here." And we pull out the iPhone. Of course, that doesn't sound very good, but this particular speaker, once you charge it, it'll run 10 hours on the charge. Nice. You can use it as a hands-free speakerphone. So if you have a call come in, it's got a mic built into it. It's got a USB charging port, so you can charge while you are connected with the Bluetooth and playing music. It's got an aux input, and it weighs less than 2 pounds. So it's pretty cool, and you can find it on Amazon for $100.
I'm only slightly covetous. Only slightly. I like the fact that you can charge it with USB. It's got a USB port in the back.
Yep.
It's got the line in, the aux in right there in case you don't have a Bluetooth device.
And it makes a good bit of racket. I mean, you can.
It's a little on the high end side. You don't get a whole lot of bass response from it. But
it does have bass ports on it.
Yeah.
But again, you got to look at the size of the speaker. That's where that full.
And
but
you can plug this into the wall. You don't just have to use it on the back.
It's got a 15-volt DC power thing that
Right.
you can plug into the wall.
You can plug it in, or you can go.
Great little sound bar on a budget.
Yeah. For
Yeah.
$100. So.
Seems cool.
The Ounce
So
XL.
check it out.
Yeah. All right, Father Ryan, your pick of the week.
So I pick it for the week. I'm actually going to be traveling out of the country in October, and then hopefully again later on in April. And so I found on Lifehacker, while we were looking through for other stuff, 15 tips about how to minimize your phone usage when you travel internationally. And last time, this ate my lunch. I spent $500 more than I wanted to on my last trip to Europe because of this. And it's simple stuff, but it's nice to know, and it's all in one place. And so it's a link in the show notes, but if you're going to be traveling internationally, Lifehacker has a bunch of these kind of articles, but this one is really, really good about data plans. And so do go to the show notes, kevinunderground.com/whatever this episode is going to be called, and find it. Look for more information.
Yeah. In fact, you can always go and search for 270, and that'll show up in the show notes.
Yeah, 270.
If you know the number, then you can usually get to the episode. Yeah, I know, Father, that it's always difficult when you travel internationally to try and figure out what you're going to do with your phone. I've even thought about getting a phone just for international travel. One that's unlocked.
Yeah,
and then
not a
get a
bad
SIM
idea.
when I get there. Have you ever tried that before?
Have I tried what?
Getting a SIM card whenever you get to Europe?
Yeah, Father Melcher tried to convince me to do that, but I don't go there often enough to justify it. And I'm gonna want, if I went over there, I'd want a phone that could do directions and stuff like that. And it's just not worth buying an iPhone, or even buying a SIM card just for over there.
Yeah.
So no.
Because I'm thinking about it too. Because Father Ryan, of course, I will be with you. In many ways, I never left you, Father. Anyway, so I don't know why I keep going back to the big boy reference, but just anyway. Yeah. So my pick of the week is really something good to kill time, because we all need an extra time killer here and there. This one's called 5by, 5by.com, and there are some apps from the App Store and on Google Play that you can get the mobile version of this. And 5by is a video concierge from the people who brought you Stumble Upon. And so now, if you're watching us in the video feed, I've got the 5by screen up here. And he says, "Hi, I'm your video concierge. It's Sunday evening. I've got videos for hip stuff, killing time, making you laugh, showing your friends, exploring, or music lovers." And so I have no idea what's going to come up on the screen for those of you watching on the video. So be ready to cut away, Tim, just in case, because we're a family show. How about music lovers? And then you click that, and then it says, well, I've got covers or electronic music or live music. So how about covers? And then it'll load for you a video. In this case, this is a cover of Scrubs from, I believe, Miss Lauryn Hill on BBC Radio 1. So it basically will be kind of like your video jukebox for whatever mood you happen to be in. And it's 5by.com is the name of it.
The number 5 and BY.
That's right. The number 5 and
5
BY.
by.
Yep, there you go.
Right.
So
Check it out.
That's my pick of the week. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off so that we can continue our show here on the CU. So that's our picks of the week. You can always let us know what your picks of the week are. I know that that we try and compile these picks of the week. We're always looking for stuff. Always. And so backchat at catholicunderground.com is a great way to do that. Father, what might be a good way is if we set up, I don't know if we should set up an email address for this. I don't know. You can use your Father Ryan organizational abilities wherein people can send us picks of the week because we're always looking for new stuff. You could tweet us.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
You know, I can't believe I just suggested that you send us email whenever we have social media. You can let us know at Facebook if you want.
Yeah. Facebook is the place to do it. Send us a message on Facebook.
That's right. And so many of you do, actually. You go to facebook.com/Catholic Underground. We can take this opportunity, since we have a few minutes, to talk a little bit about our Facebook page. Right now, we are at 4,919 likes on Facebook. My goal will be to get to 5,000 before September.
Yeah.
We
can do that.
I think
you
we
can help us.
And so if you haven't followed us, what's that?
That's reasonable.
It is a reasonable goal, I think. And so if you haven't followed us on Facebook, facebook.com/Catholic Underground, and one of the things that Father Ryan does is because he stepped up his social media policy there in at the Basilica, and so he will rebroadcast some of the things from his minor Basilica feed on Catholic Underground, and they're usually really good. Like, for example, today it's St. Josemaria Escriva's 17 Signs of a Lack of Humility. Some of the things that we've covered on the show that may be pertinent for your prayer life. So give us a follow or whatever you call it, a like on Facebook, and whenever something new comes up in the feed, you'll be able to see it. You'll also be able to see whenever we have a live show or whenever things are happening in the chat room. That's over at facebook.com/Catholic Underground. You can also follow us on Twitter, and you do that by following at Cath Underground, CATH Underground. And usually our live show tweets and things happen. And a lot of you do get in touch with us on Twitter, especially while you're listening to the show. It kind of works as another type of chat room. And so that's a good way to go about doing that. And as we always do, Jeff, none of this would be possible without you who listen.
Yeah, portions of the Catholic Underground are brought to you by audibletrial.com/Catholic Underground. That's audibletrial.com/Catholic Underground.
That's right. For the show notes that accompany this episode and the podcast, to find out more about our apostolate, if you want to check out all of the stuff we got going on Twitter and Facebook, go to CatholicUnderground.com to do that. Father Ryan's church is online at minorbasilica.org. He's at FR Humphreys on Twitter. Thank you, Father Ryan.
It's been my privilege.
Jeff Blackwell is a tech director for the CU. He's also the despot over at the Blackwell Communications Group, jeffblackwell.us, and on Twitter at Jeff Blackwellis. Thank you, Jeff.
It's a privilege, Father.
Tim the Sim Seminarian intern has got the video feed wired this week, and he rebrands small-town governmental websites. You know me, I'm Father Chris Decker. Follow me on Twitter at Digital Catholic. Join us on Catholic Underground all the time, CatholicUnderground.com. We are faith gone digital, my friends. We will see you next time.
From the Catholic Underground.